Simpsons Hit and Run is a racing game slash 3D platformer from 2003, and is considered to be one of the best licensed games of all time, ranking it highly amongst the other GOATs of this genre. Personally, I love this game. It takes direct inspiration from the show, and there are tons of references in almost every place you look. And despite the game being so old, the graphics hold up pretty well. Not to say an official remaster wouldn't be appreciated. The game also has a banger soundtrack, which did recently have its music released on both Spotify and iTunes, if you guys are looking to spice up your playlist a bit with some Cletus banjo bangers. But of course, the main appeal with this game is that it's just really fun to play, and it has a lot of replayability to it, which in some ways made the speedrun grind much more tolerable, as I never truly got bored, but I'm not gonna lie and say I didn't start losing my mind a bit with just how inconsistent this game is at times. Anyways, I can probably elaborate more on these points later on, but for now, let's just get into the game. So for the speedrun, we're actually allowed to skip the intro cutscene by creating a save file that's made right after it plays the first time. But I'm just going to let it play out so I can explain the story a little bit. The game opens up with a bunch of cameras disguised as wasps that begin spawning into Springfield, spying on all of its residents. One flies a bit too close to Homer while he's taking a nap on the couch, so he destroys it, giving him a couple of coins. Shortly afterwards, Krusty the Clown appears during a commercial, advertising a new flavor of Buzz Cola, with a mysterious yet potentially dangerous ingredient added to it, which entices Homer. With the now irresistible urge to go buy Buzz Cola, we head outside to talk to Marge to start our first mission to pick up some groceries at the Quickie Mart.
Cola. Must get Buzz Cola.
Now, if you've ever watched a Simpsons Hit and Run speedrun stream before, you'd probably know that we tend to spend a lot of time in Homer 1, making countless trips to the Quickie Mart for Buzz Cola. But luckily with today's sponsor HelloFresh, we're able to skip the trip to the Quickie Mart altogether and have fresh and delicious ingredients delivered straight to our doorstep. I've ordered HelloFresh a handful of times at this point, and here's what keeps me coming back. As someone who regularly meal preps, I'd constantly find myself struggling to come up with new things to make. I'd waste money buying entire containers of ingredients just to only use them once, and having to make the weekly trip to the grocery store was really starting to get old. What's great about HelloFresh is they send you the exact ingredients you need, so nothing goes to waste. And it's way cheaper than going out to eat, especially if you use my code at checkout. The meal I decided to make tonight were these Gouda pork burgers with potato wedges. Now I'm kind of a noob when it comes to cooking, but what's great about cooking HelloFresh recipes is they literally teach you how to cook, and I get to try out using ingredients that I'd never even considered using before. Again, if you're interested in trying this meal, or one of the many others listed on the website, make sure you check out the link in the description, or go to hellofresh.com, and use my code POG EZScape 70 during checkout, which does help support the channel, and you can also do that while enjoying the rest of the video. Thanks again to HelloFresh, and let's get back to the video. So the category that I'm going to be running today is called All Story Missions, not any percent. The any percent category is pretty broken, but not in a way that makes the game fun to play, and instead relies on purposefully restarting and failing missions so many times the game just lets you move on, which is why All Story Missions is the main speedrun category for the leaderboards. All missions in this game are either collectathons, fetch quests, races, tailing missions, or the objective will either be to destroy a car or just hit it enough times for it to drop enough collectibles to move on. Throughout the run, it will also be important for me to collect 3,600 coins along the way, as there are certain cars and costumes that are mandatory to be unlocked to start and complete missions. Most destructible objects give 1 coin, phone booths give 2, crusty glasses and newspaper stands give 5, vending machines give 15, wasps either give 25 or 26 if they have a shield, and crusty boxes give 31. Coin routing is one of the more difficult things to learn, as knowing exactly where each box or wasp is a lot more difficult to remember than what to do for each mission, especially when most of these pickups are collected during missions, so forgetting them or missing them along the way can be very detrimental to the run. It's also worth mentioning that the platform I'm playing this game on is PC, which if you're also looking to play or speedrun this game, this is by far the superior platform to play the game on. I'll have a link to the Simpsons Hit and Run Speedrun Discord server in the description that has a starter pack section which should get you up and running pretty quickly. This Discord server helped me with a lot of info regarding strats and routing when I was first getting started from some of the more experienced members, so if you do have any questions about this game, this would be the place to go. With playing on the PC version also means that you have direct control over what frame rate you play the game on. I chose to play the game on 69 FPS, because not only am I extremely immature, but this means you guys are also watching the fastest completed run of this game on 69 FPS ever. A world record, if you will. There are a lot of differences between running this game on frame rates as low as 45 to as high as 200. Really, there's no reason to play this game on 69 FPS, because the lower FPS strategies only become easier at 60 FPS or lower, which will come into play later, but I'll explain more once we get there. All you need to know is that once you're playing at a frame rate of at least 120 to 200, a lot of doors open up in terms of what strategies and time saves become doable. The higher your FPS is, the faster your car will go when maneuvering around small bumps on the ground, allowing for 15 to 20 seconds of time save in the early game just in movement. Dialogue skipping is faster, screen transitions are faster, you jump higher, and there are a handful of FPS related skips like boat jump in the Lisa level, or the endgame out of bounds tricks that just aren't viable on lower FPS. But I decided to run on the lower FPS, not just for the memes, but also as a personal challenge for myself, and also so that my video could potentially be used as a guide for newer speedrunners to follow, as beginners will always want to start in 60 FPS or lower, where if I was doing more advanced strategies, it would be impossible for others to follow along. If you are interested in learning this game, I'd highly recommend following LiquidWifi's beginner speedrun tutorial, as that's what I initially followed. I'll have it linked in the description. Anyways, that's pretty much my spiel for the basics of understanding this game. I will mention right away, as this is the most asked question on my stream, that for the most part, I do play this game in first person mode, as do most top players, but this is merely down to preference. I feel like I have better control of the car in first person and can drive more precisely, but also switch to third person when I need to see the sides of my car for positioning. There are some people that only play the game in third person, some also being very good runners, so it doesn't actually play a role in going fast or not. Also in the background, you can see me completing the first handful of missions, which are pretty straightforward and don't really need explained. That is until we get to the mission 1-4, Office Space, which is the first tricky mission. In this mission, we have to destroy Smithers' car to prevent him from getting to the power plant before Homer does. To start this mission, we first need to talk to Lenny, and then buy the Plow King for Barney, either before or after talking to Lenny. To do this quickly, I'll push Lenny as close as I can to Barney to reduce the distance I have to run, which is pretty tricky to do, as Lenny will sometimes attempt to jump away from the car, or oncoming traffic can just block you. After starting the mission, instead of driving the Plow King to destroy Smithers' car, I'll instead grab a traffic car, either using a truck or a sedan, whichever one happens to be closest. However, before entering the car, I have to make sure Homer drops that ass on it for good measure. Perfect. I'm not exactly sure why this affects anything, since on the way to driving to Smithers, I drive through a wrench, but here's why I do it. After spawning the Smithers limo, I'll do a head-on collision to do the first bit of damage, and then when I get close to this house, just past the crosswalk, I'll turn into his limo to push it, line myself up with his chimney, and then smash both my car and his limo into the wall. You'll notice right after this hit that my car is already smoking, which only occurs because of the earlier butt slam. After one more hit on Smithers, the traffic car will blow up, which should do the remaining damage, but sometimes a couple of butt slams are necessary to finish it off, like in my case. I really like this strat because not only is it fast and consistent, but you also get 10 free coins for the coin route. I'd really recommend it to any runners doing traffic car strats. Next up is 1-5, one of the few exclusively platforming levels of the game, and one of my personal favorites to do quickly. The goal here is to just destroy all of these power couplings. I do a pretty advanced strat here, which starts on the far side of the area where most people would finish, doing it in reverse. I need to maintain good speed and make sure I can make it to the moving bridge in time to cross it. In this run, I was slightly off cycle, so I had to take risky movement running along the railing, but luckily for me, I crossed it with no issues. After hitting the next machine, you'll notice my camera zoom in super hard, and what I'm doing here is holding both camera zoom buttons at the same time, and for some reason, if you run while these are held down, allows the character to airwalk. This is pretty tough to do because obviously you can't really see, and there are a bunch of railings sticking out that can halt movement. I mainly rely on using the minimap to know where I'm at. I definitely don't recommend this strat if you're just starting out, but man, if it is not satisfying to pull off. Following this mission, we'll have our first of the two unskippable cutscenes of the run. In this cutscene, we're shown that the public is now fully aware of these surveillance cameras, but it appears that there are also surveillance fans, spying on the citizens of Springfield. Homer notices one parked outside of the house, and decides to follow it, which leads into our first trailing mission.
Oh, homie, you're so sexy when you're paranoid.
To do this quickly, I'll restart to start the mission already driving the family sedan, and then right when I gain control, I'll pause and unpause, which prevents the black van from backing up before moving forward. Since we're still early in the game, the rubber banding on this van is ridiculous, and its speed is dictated by how close we're driving next to it. This means that not only can I get too far behind, but I can't get too far ahead either. But still, this is a basic trailing mission, so while following it around, I'll make sure to pick up as many boxes and other coin pickups that I can along the way. Upon entering the power plant, I want to make sure to slow down my car so that the black van reduces its speed, because if it's driving too fast, it will crash into this wall, losing a lot of time. After reaching stonecutters, I'll do a jump and attempt to hit 2 wasps flying around, which is much easier to do in a traffic car compared to the family sedan, but somehow I still messed that up and didn't hit either of the wasps. Afterwards, while the black van is finishing its drive, I'll run over to the phone booth and switch to the family sedan, because with the next mission, I'm forced to use Marge's Canyon Arrow. But since I haven't properly unlocked that car yet, following that mission, the game would force me to use the most recently driven unlocked car that I own, which if you remember, is actually the Plow King, which we definitely don't want to be driving. Also, when I switch to the family sedan, I'm going to perform a trick called ESS, which stands for Enter Skip Storage. Basically how ESS works is it allows me to store the interaction of pressing enter to skip a screen transition and use it in a spot where you're not supposed to. This is a pretty confusing way of explaining it, but hopefully if I break it down, it will make more sense. Whenever we select a car from a phone booth, the camera will slowly point towards the car to show us where it spawned, and then bring the camera back over to the character. However, if we press the enter button, we can speed up this camera transition and immediately give control back to the character we're playing as. This interaction of pressing enter to zoom the camera back into the player is the interaction that we'll be storing, and the way we do this is instead of pressing enter after selecting the car, we'll instead press a button that switches the car to first or third person perspective. You can tell when I'm doing this because there will be this really weird camera angle pointing straight to the player in a completely fixed position. So when you see this, it means that the zoom in is now stored. The reason I do this is so that whenever I warp to the next mission, Bone Storm Storm, instead of having to sit there watching the opening cinematic, an enter button will appear at the bottom of the screen, and if I press enter, I can zoom in right away, instantly giving me control. Realistically, this probably only saves 3 or 4 seconds, but there are so many spots where we can do this that it ends up saving as much time as any other trick, and it's really easy to pull off. Anyways, for the next mission, Marge doesn't like the new Bone Storm video game that was recently released, and eggs on Homer to help her destroy all of the copies out of the delivery truck. The main strategy here is hitting the truck with the least force possible while still getting the drop. Doing this quickly before the shortcut will yield a decent amount of time save, but this is pretty tricky to do and can't be expected to be pulled off perfectly each time. If the shortcut is missed, it's best to just keep the truck moving as fast as possible. While you watch me finish up the next 2 missions of Homer 1, there are a bunch of mechanics I'd really like to explain now, because they are mechanics that are going to be present for the entirety of the rest of the run, and it's more important to explain now than later. The first mechanic I'd like to explain is despawns. When driving the car, it's possible to turn the camera back to not only see what's going on behind you, but this actually makes it possible to despawn traffic in front of you, or in some cases, spawn traffic directly into your path, which you'll definitely see me doing throughout this run. This is a very nuanced game mechanic, and most runners just have preferred locations where they've learned both when to use despawns to their advantage, and also know when it's too risky to attempt. Traffic is the most uncontrollable variable of the run, but being able to have some control over it is what allows top runners to stay as consistent as possible. As I finish up Bone Storm Storm, there are 2 interesting exploits featured here that save time in the final mission of Homer 1. For some reason, warping to a mission while standing in front of a doorway, following a mission that starts with a countdown timer like Bone Storm Storm, removes the black bars from the opening cinematic. Whenever these black bars aren't present for the cinematic, it's always possible to pause and unpause the game to pan in right away. This is essentially the same outcome as performing ESS, just with a different type of setup. After starting the Fat and Furious mission, instead of following the path to Ray Smithers, I'll instead drive backwards towards the power plant, which has its doors closed for this mission. But by pressing the button to reset the car after getting close to the door allows me to clip through it and completely cheese the rest of the race, saving several minutes. While you watch the remainder of Homer 1, the final bit of information that's relevant for the run is Wasp Collision. Trying to understand the full depth of how Wasp Collision works, and why in some cases they get destroyed and others they don't, is way out of my expertise, but I can at least fill you in on some of the basics. Per each level, Wasp can only be destroyed twice while driving before they lose collision, with the only exceptions being Homer 1 and Lisa, where you can hit 3 wasps instead. And what I mean by lose collision is that once this occurs, you can drive at them all you like, and they simply will not blow up unless you either kick them while on foot, or quit out of the game and re-enter, which will reset the Wasp Collision. Quitting out to reset Wasp Collision is something that I will occasionally do throughout the run, but it loses around 3 seconds each time compared to a normal mission warp. Anyways, once I finish the race and talk to Mr. Burns, this marks the end of Homer 1. In my run, I didn't have the greatest Homer 1 segment, but I stopped resetting average Homer 1 splits because Bart can be so brutal in terms of RNG, that in order to get on more sub 135 pace runs, I would pretty much run anything under 12 minutes. Speaking of Bart 1 RNG, luck for this level begins right after talking to Milhouse. What I want to do here is check which car is driving in the background after skipping the dialogue. If the car is anything other than a sports car, that means when I run up left, I can guarantee a sports car pickup, which is the fastest car I'll have access to in the section. Unfortunately in this run, the car in the background did happen to be the sports car, which meant it would be too far out of the way to grab, and I would have to use the honor roller instead. For some reason, the honor roller is some people's favorite car, and is probably one of the more nostalgic ones to drive for sure, but honestly, it really sucks for the run. So much so that even a taxi would be a better choice than driving it. This is best shown during the Skinner chase. Most of the time I would just be able to drive past him with no issues, but this car is so slow, he ends up running into me, losing some time. But hey, it isn't the end of the world because at the start of the next mission, after talking to Kearney, we can just park the honor roller and ditch it to find a better car, and I do manage to secure a sports car to drive from here. The rest of this mission is pretty straightforward, and we'll just drive around Springfield collecting a bunch of fireworks. The last person I need to collect fireworks from is Ralph, but I want to pick them up from him in a very specific way. First, I'll park right next to Ralph, not only to reduce my running distance, but also to avoid parking where the fireworks spawn to not pick them up too early. After re-entering the car, I'll drive into the fireworks, which will trigger a police chase from Chief Wiggum. From here, I'll drive into the other side of the road, and then drive through the grass. Wiggum's AI will always get confused here, allowing me to escape quickly. Following this, we'll have the race versus the nerd. This race is pretty easy, and while sometimes you can get unlucky, driving along the sidewalk should avoid most of the traffic, and cutting corners will easily secure the lead. Towards the end of the race, I'll drive through the grass to the hospital to hit 2 boxes and a Wasp, and then finish the race. Since I'm forced to use a nerd's car for this race, I lose access to the sports car, so before I warp to the next mission, I'll try to pick another one up, or at the very least grab a taxi. The next mission is another tailing mission following a black van. Just like the first tailing mission, the same concept applies in terms of rubber banding. There is a tricky tech I can do at the start of this mission called dirt jump to manipulate the van to jump in the dirt ramp with you, but I found this trick to be inconsistent and doesn't save a lot of time. So I ended up cutting it out and opt for grabbing box and Wasp pickups instead, so I don't have to grab them later. During this trailing mission, I'll continue staying close to the van while also picking up a Wasp at the car wash and then another by the crusty glasses. Just before finishing this part of the mission, I'll grab a box just before the game warps me and then talk to Chief Wiggum. After talking to Wiggum, I'll head over to the highway to start a street race with Snake. I can cheese this race pretty easily by turning around and heading to the unfinished highway. Towards the end of the street, there's a ramp I can jump off to the right, and if I manage to do the jump correctly, I can land on the lower part of the highway, leading me straight to the downtown area where the end of the race is, finishing it pretty quickly. Next up is a Cletus mission where we have to drive his truck around, picking up 14 flat meat scattered around the city. This part is pretty simple, and generally I'll finish picking them all up, with anywhere from 17 to 19 seconds left on the timer. It isn't until the last part of this mission where we have to quickly escape from Apu to try to save a bit of time. To do this quickly, I'll drive around the Krusty Burger parking lot, making it difficult for Apu's AI to follow me. And if I drive fast enough, I can escape him very quickly. In this run, not only did I get a very quick Apu escape, but I managed to snag an extra free 10 coins from a smoking car on my way through the parking lot. If I were to run this game again, I would probably start grabbing the nearby gazebo box and Wasp, but I run a slightly different coin route in Lisa that makes grabbing those coins redundant, so I just end up leaving them there. After finishing this mission, I'll quit the game to the main menu to reset Wasp Collision, drive the honor roller to Dr. Nick to start the mission, and then drive to Homer to buy our second vehicle of the run, Mr. Plow. For this mission, I have to drive around the area picking up 30 monkeys for Dr. Nick. Picking up the monkeys is easy enough, but the difficult part is hitting all the wasps and collecting all of the coin boxes, especially the one after the dirt jump. These are all really important to collect because this mission is one of the most crucial in terms of coin routing. But overall, this mission is pretty chill. It's the next level sellouts that is by far the most difficult part of Bart 1 and is the bottleneck of the entire early game. For this mission, the goal is to destroy 4 cars. For the first car, I want to hit it slightly on the right side, hard enough to deal decent damage, but not so head on to make it lose speed. I'll then follow it along the road, doing one big hit into its side, and then a couple of additional ones to finish it off. For the second car, I'll try to hit it head on as hard as I can, and then try to keep it in place, forcing it to back up so it can keep running into it again until it explodes. Sometimes I'll get a weird bounce where the strategy doesn't work, like in this run, and in this case, I'll quickly resort to a backup, depending on which way it turns, and clean it up from there. For the third car, I'll usually go for one big hit head on, and then try hitting it against the tower. But like I said before, this mission is an absolute pain, with the biggest reason being traffic. As I went for my hit, a sports car drove right in front of me, and I had to freestyle back it up from here. Luckily, I did a pretty good job at this by squeezing it between my car and a building, but this had me way out of place for the fourth car. Since I wasn't able to build up good speed for the fourth car, I decided to get my hit and then let it go, and go for another squeeze, which did end up working out, allowing me to get the car one hit away from blowing up. And then this happened. Dude, this lineup right here.
Eat my dust, dust eaters.
Dude, make it make sense to me. Allow me to understand. Just... What?
It's time for some road rage. Bart
Oh
Simpson
my god.
style.
What? What? I'm...
That was totally awesome.
What? Yeah, I have no words for this. For each hit, I was performing an e-brake boost, which is where you tap handbrake and then accelerate from a dead stop to speed up quicker, which I thought would be more than enough power to deal the final hit, but I guess with each and every time I tried, I happened to be very slightly off. Can't say the traffic is really helping either. A really good sellouts for me would be destroying the fourth car with 6 minutes 25 seconds left on the timer. An average one would be anywhere from a 6:10 to 6:15, but this one was a 5:43, over 30 seconds slower than an average pace. Which really exemplifies my point about how brutal this mission is, and even though the final car is blown up, the most difficult part is yet to come. After finishing this mission, a 55-second cutscene, which is normally unskippable, will attempt to play. Just before it plays, I'll run over to the phone booth, set up ESS to save a few seconds on the next level, and then try to time my pause to pop up just before the game loads a cutscene. If I do this right, I'll get a pause menu with the mission select text available, and when I go to choose my mission, level 3 will be unlocked, allowing me to progress without watching the cutscene. While I wasn't thrilled to get such a bad sellouts time, I did manage to pull off the cutscene skip, and I was still in the green, so I decided to play out Lisa for a bit to see if I could manage a decent segment. With my best possible time still well under an hour 30 minutes, anything could happen, I suppose. The first mission of Lisa is pretty straightforward, as it's just another nerd race. The only thing to really look out for in these missions is avoiding hit and runs, because ever since we left Homer 1, the rate at which the hit and run meter degrades is much slower, and Lisa has to drive on the pier a lot, which has a lot of pedestrians. For the most part when driving on the pier, I'll just try driving around the pedestrians, or despawning them with a camera. But I swear, some of these guys are attempting insurance fraud or something, because they will literally jump in front of your car. Anyways, like I said, this mission is a pretty straightforward point A to point B mission, but it's the next mission Clueless that can get a little stressful. This mission starts out with driving from location to location, talking to Milhouse each time. I'll drive the Malibu Stacy car, as it's actually a really fast vehicle. Like I said before, the main thing I want to be careful of is the hit and run meter, which is kind of obvious, but it can get really scary with the particular route that I'm running. After reaching the pier, I'll drive down to the beach to destroy 2 boxes, which will add a bit onto the meter. After grabbing the boxes, I'll reset the car to spawn on top of the pier, and after talking to Milhouse, I'll have 60 seconds to finish the rest of the mission. Normally this time limit is pretty generous, but like I said earlier in the video, I run a slightly safer coin route in Lisa, and this is where it occurs. For the fastest path, I'll do a jump to drive into this boat, and then reset the car to skip most of the pier. Next I'll drive up to Krusty Lou Studios, park my car, and then run into the building. Right by the set, there's a room with a ton of boxes and vending machines, and I'll destroy them all, giving roughly 150 coins total. The issue is the timer for this mission is still counting down, so after collecting, I'll head back to my car, reset it by the back end of the studio, and then finish the mission with a handful of seconds left to spare. This can actually go really bad with unlucky traffic, which we almost caught a glimpse of this time, but it does make the coin route really safe. Although if I did run this again, I would probably cut this out as it does cost almost 30 seconds. But for getting a sub 135, I still think it's worth doing. Next up is the mission Bonfire of the Manatees, which will be our second mission involving pushing a car. The first one being the Smithers limo mission from earlier. Out of all the car pushes in this run, this one is by far the easiest and most consistent, and even if it does fail, you do have the option of resetting the mission to try it again, making it relatively forgiving compared to later ones. In this attempt, a traffic car nearly got in my way, but I managed to not only quickly recover, but I also got 2 free pickups while getting them into the spot like an absolute gamer. After getting all 15 flat meat, I'll reset my car and then head to the observatory to talk to Professor Frink. After finishing the mission, I'll buy the cool Lisa outfit and then mission warp to start the next mission, Operation Hellfish. For this mission, I'll need to buy a bus from Otto. To get to him quickly, I'll pick up a traffic car, which would ideally be a truck, and then head over to Camp Krusty. The truck is preferred here as there is a box and a wasp in this area I can grab by driving over these rocks, which is easiest to do with the truck. After buying the bus, I'll restart the mission and officially get started with it. For this mission, there are 3 black sedans you have to destroy, and each one has a fast strat, which if you happen to hit, saves a lot of time, but if you miss, you'll generally lose a ton. The first car is simple. I'll just drive him into this tree. In this case, however, he ended up getting free after the hit, which isn't a big deal since his car will always hit the wall at the end of the street, but of course, traffic was there to prevent that from happening, so I had to clean it up manually. The second car will want to hit head on, but in such a way that the car does a full 180 right into the wall to trap it. And of course, I got it trapped on its side again, and attempted to do some e-brake boosts to destroy it, and just could not manage that final hit, which is definitely something I'll need to work on, or at least be more aware about if I ever run this game again. Anyways, moving on to the final car, I'll do a jump off the right side of this ramp to the pier next to this purple building, and then reset the bus. This puts me in the perfect spot to hit the black sedan from behind, right into the railing, and then if it has any health left on it, I can do a butt slam with Lisa to finish it off. Not the greatest of missions I've ever done, but not the worst either. At least I managed to hit all of the strats. The next mission, Slithery Sleuthing, isn't even a difficult mission, yet it's probably the mission I've lost the most runs to. In this mission, we drive in Police Wiggum's car, following Snake as he drops evidence. I want to follow closely behind him, picking up the first 2 drops as they come out. After grabbing the second drop, I'll drive to the arcade, reset my car, and try to position myself in front of Snake. This is also so I can slow him down and try to keep him somewhat still as he passes the trigger for his third drop. I tried my best to stall him to force the drop, but there is a lot of variance with how this car will interact, and I just couldn't manage to do it, and he slipped through. Regardless, whether the final drop happens before the bridge or after it is purely RNG. And in this case, even with stalling him for a little bit, I still got extremely unlucky and had to grab the item not just after the bridge, but about as far away from the bridge as you can get, losing a ton of time. I still managed to finish this mission in the green, but just barely. The next mission, Fishy Deals, is another straightforward mission with no strats to it, just pick up 22 fish quickly, so nothing to talk about here. However, upon finishing this mission, I'll run over to the phone booth, grab the bus, and then start the Old Pirate in the Sea, one of the most difficult missions to do quickly. After starting this mission, I prefer to restart it immediately to start in the bus, but I have to make sure to pause and unpause the game to prevent the limo from backing up before moving forwards. The way I do the fast strat here is I'll push the back of the limo to the right, forcing it to crash into the wall, and then hit it from behind. Ideally, I'll be able to get it stuck in between the bus and the wall, so I can just hit it there repeatedly. But this time I didn't have a great lineup, so I decided to just let it go and attempt a backup strat instead. The backup here is pretty simple, and is basically just a normal beginner strat, where we guide the limo off the pier and trap it on this ramp. If I do this right, the limo will get stuck in a spot where it's bashing the wall back and forth slowly, doing damage to itself until it's destroyed. Since I already did a lot of damage to the limo during my setups, I didn't have to wait too long by the sea captain before moving on. Next, I need to make my way onto the boat. Casually, most people would probably drive their car off a ramp to land on the boat, but since I'm using the bus, I can instead use it to jump onto one of these poles and then jump to the boat. I choose a pole right here, not only because it's fast, but because I also get a free Wasp pickup. After talking to Bart, this marks the end of the Lisa level, with me being only 2 seconds in the green over my previous run. So if I want to get that sub 135, I was going to need to save some serious time in the next few levels. Following the Lisa level is Marge, where for a lot of the levels, we get to drive the best car in the game, the Canyon Arrow. For the first mission here, we have to tail Chief Wiggum, which is really easy to do with the shortcuts, so I'll try to collect a couple of extra coins along the way. But it's the second part of this mission is what makes it so difficult, where I have to hit this donut truck 10 times and then report back to Chief Wiggum. Since the end of this mission is so close to the start, the fastest way to complete it is by trapping the donut truck close by. There is a strat here where you can lead the donut truck to the nearby building, but this trick is really difficult to do and doesn't save a ton of time over just parking in front of it and letting the donut truck repeatedly hit your car, that I think this strat is much more suitable for beginners. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to grab the first donut that spawned, which is somewhat common as I don't want to let the truck loose, but overall the segment ended up being decent. The next mission is Redneck Roundup, which is a straightforward mission where I just need to follow Cletus around Springfield, picking up the items that fall out of his truck. There isn't too much you can do to make this mission any faster, so along the way, I'll just make sure to pick up as many boxes and vending machines as I can get. I did end up getting the final drop a bit early, which did save a little time, which is about the only time save you can expect from this mission. After this mission, I need to stop by the Quickie Mart and buy the inmate outfit for Marge, as it's needed for the upcoming mission, and then I'll warp to the mission Catch-Up Logic, where instead of following Cletus, we get to play as him. Again, another straightforward mission where we just have to pick up 18 ketchup packets around Springfield. Since the acceleration is so bad in Cletus' truck, I'll avoid going for any coin pickups and wait to pick them up in the next mission. The only tricky part about this level is the Wheel of Fortune and the power plant. The only way to have enough speed to reach the ketchup packet at the top of the ramp is by driving slightly down the left path, turning around, and going full speed towards it, which means if I happen to be off cycle for the wheel, I'm pretty much screwed, since I can't slow down to avoid it, because then I won't have enough speed to get across. Luckily, I managed to be on a good cycle this run, and didn't have to lose any time, making this a very solid segment. The next mission might honestly be the shortest mission of the entire run. It's just a race to their retirement home versus Chief Wiggum, but since shortcuts are a thing, this segment is less than a minute long. It's the next few missions in Marge where things start to heat up, starting with Wolves Stole My Pills. In this mission, we first need to stop by the school and talk to Nelson. After grabbing the box at the back of the school, I'll reset my car to begin a tailing mission, where I have to collect the pill bottles dropped from the black sedan. This mission is deceptively difficult because the game literally cheats. When following the sedan, if the meter is 20% or lower when a pill bottle drops, you automatically fail the mission, regardless if it's at 0 or not. So it's very easy to get stuck in traffic, or trigger a hit and run, forcing a fail. Luckily in this run, I didn't have any issues like that, and I managed to collect a ton of coin boxes and vending machines along the way. Once this mission is completed, we are finally onto our second, and hopefully last unskippable cutscene for the run. In this cutscene, Grandpa recants an old memory of a crop circle, and explains that it looked like a planet with a radio antenna sticking out of it. Marge recognizes that this sounds very similar to the logo of the new Buzz Cola. With this newly acquired information, she takes a can of Buzz Cola to Bart, who is hypnotized by aliens, and it breaks him out of his trance. Now that we know for sure that the cola is what's causing everyone in Springfield to go crazy, the next couple of missions are going to be spent ridding the town of all of its cola. Before I start these missions, I'm going to make sure that I main menu warp before talking to Bart to reset Marge's car back to the default Canyon Narrow. After talking to Bart, I'll then buy the police costume, restart the mission, and begin collecting scattered cola cans around the area on foot. This is another platforming section, and I'll use some neat tricks like the airwalk to pick up certain cans quicker and some precise jumps to maneuver the buildings. Once I grab the last can, I'll run into the Quickie Mart, talk to Apu, and then restart the mission to start the mission in the car. This is by far the most difficult mission of Marge, where I have to destroy 3 cola trucks. There's a fast trap for the first truck where you can get it trapped on the gas station sign, but I opt for not going for it because it tends to displace the truck for the second fastest strat, where I just push behind the truck and ram it into these bushes. Unfortunately, these strats are really difficult to be made consistent since I'm driving the Canyon Narrow, which is the most inconsistent vehicle in the run. Traffic can get in the way a lot and change the driving patterns of the trucks, but in general, these strats can be somewhat precise, requiring the perfect amount of space and speed in order to pull off. Speaking of inconsistent, there's a jump we can do for an extra box on the way to the second truck. Of course, instead of getting the box, my car decided to clip into the roof of the building, preventing me from moving forward. I ended up having to reset my car onto a completely different road, and I wasn't able to get the box, losing a ton of time. My luck would only get worse as I missed a fast strat for the second truck and would instead have to go for a backup strat inside of the power plant. The third truck is by far the most difficult because if the strat doesn't work for this, there is very little you can do in terms of backup strats. I had a really bad start to this as a traffic car drove right in front of me just as I triggered the truck to move. I had to drive really fast to try to get there in time and somehow still managed to get it trapped on the tree to pull off the trick. Overall, this mission went really badly, but not bad enough to not continue the run, so it looks like we're going to be heading into Apu, hanging on by a thread. And yeah, funnily enough, we do get to play as Apu in this game, which isn't what you would expect because he isn't a main character or anything, but I guess after Marge forced him to stop selling cola at the Quickie Mart, he decided to start looking into it himself. To start off Apu, I'll drive around grabbing a couple of Krusty boxes because we're going to need to spend a whole bunch of coins very soon, and if I don't have enough, the time loss will start spilling out across the rest of the run. I'll first need to buy the American costume at Moe's, and then start the mission over by the railroads. In this mission, I have to follow this cola truck and pick up the crates that fall out of it. At this point in the game, obviously rubber banding is no longer in play, but vehicles like the cola truck move at an extremely fast pace, with a much stricter distance meter, so getting caught up in traffic or taking too long for certain coin pickups can easily lose you this mission. The cola truck is really tough though, and will plow most cars out of the way, so I usually opt for not despawning anything because it's possible to get quite a few extra coin pickups along the way from finishing off smoking cars, getting 10 coins for each one. There are 2 points during this chase where I'll want to keep the camera flicked backwards, otherwise the truck is very likely to get stuck. I never managed to completely figure this out, and the truck would still get stuck quite often, but yeah. Overall a straightforward mission, let's move on to the next. This mission, and Baby Makes 8, is pretty easy. I just need to run away from some mobsters and get to the hospital before time runs out. The first mobster can easily be avoided by just driving the intended shortcuts to the hospital. As I approach the fountain by the hospital, I'll reset my car just as I spawn in the other mobster, and then drive away towards the town hall to escape him quickly, and also pick up the remainder coins that I need. At this point, before driving to the hospital, if you don't have 500 coins, you automatically start bleeding time, which is why it's so important to have a route that's consistent. After driving into the hospital trigger to complete the mission, I'll hop over the fence and buy the car built for Homer, which is required for the next mission 8 is too much, and is also one of the best cars in the game, so this will be the main car used for the rest of Apu. This mission features the most infamous car of the game, Baby Van. What makes it so infamous? Well, this is because when starting the mission, the car will either drive normally, which is fine, but there's a random chance that it'll have what is referred to as wonky driving. There's an entire 30-minute video that exists that goes into a deep dive on why this occurs. I tried watching it and didn't figure it out, but it did cure my insomnia. All I know is I've only had Baby Van drive normally for me 4 or 5 times in my entire 5 weeks of running this game. Otherwise, it was wonky driving every single time. If it drives normally, there's a pretty consistent strat where you can get it trapped, but when it's wonky, you just have to do your best. As you can see in this run, I got wonky driving, and yeah, not much else to say about it. Apparently, if you play in Windows XP, wonky driving rarely, if ever, occurs. But I just wasn't dedicated enough to the grind to downgrade, and for that, I do truly apologize. The next mission, This Little Piggy, is pretty simple. I just need to drive around the city picking up 21 donuts, and then after grabbing the final one, I'll follow Chief Wiggum all the way down to the DMV where we meet Snake. However, these next 2 missions are considered some of the most difficult from a casual perspective. The first one, called Never Trust a Snake, has you follow a garbage truck around, picking up the 5 trash cans that fall out of it. Pretty simple, but after grabbing the 5th drop, the game then requires you to run around the downtown area, picking up 25 additional trash cans. It's incredibly difficult to beat this mission on your first try, because the game kind of just drops a second challenge on you mid-mission, with the same timer from the following garbage truck. Without having somewhat of an idea of where all the trash cans are, and also having a general familiarity of the area, it's pretty unlikely you'll beat this mission without a good strategy. But of course, since I'm a speedrunner, I managed to collect all of the trash cans within a good amount of time, while also collecting several wasps and crusty boxes along the way, finishing the mission with over 40 seconds to spare. The next mission, Quick Cash, might honestly be the most difficult mission of the run. Not from an execution standpoint, but more so from how much time you lose from making a single mistake. We'll start this mission in Snake's car, and drive over this ramp to lead to the downtown area. Crossing the following intersection will trigger a police chase with Chief Wiggum. To escape him quickly, all I have to do is hug the left wall with a good amount of speed, which will confuse his AI. Unfortunately in this run, I got blocked by an ambulance. I attempted to fix this by e-brake boosting into the wall, but it just wasn't enough speed to get the strat working. Getting the quick escape is necessary to set up the fast strat for the second part of this mission, so it wasn't looking great for me to be able to pull it off. For this part, I have to destroy this armored truck, which as you can guess is extremely difficult to deal damage to with Snake's car. So the strategy here is, instead of repeatedly bashing it into walls of the car, is to just trap it and let it destroy itself. Luckily, despite running into every vehicle on the road along the way to the truck, I managed to keep composure and pulled off the strat, which if missed here, there is no real backup for. I would have for sure lost several minutes, several coins, and had to reset the run. While the armored truck destroys itself, I'll drive around the area picking up some additional coins and destroy some wasps. As the damage meter gets close to full, I'll position myself close to the ambulances. I don't want to drive any further than this, because if I do, the armored truck will despawn. Once it's destroyed, I'll beeline to the end of the mission, drive through the car wash to cheese another race with Wiggum, and then finish the mission. Now we're on to the final mission of Apu, Curious Curator, where I have to destroy the curator's car as quickly as possible. I'll first attempt a strat where I knock the car into one of the stone lions by the museum, so I can destroy the car while sitting in the trigger for the end of the mission, but I had a pretty bad attempt, so I'd have to go for a backup strat instead. And just like how quick cash traffic was not on my side, I yet again got blocked from getting another quick kill. I did manage to pull off a pretty solid backup from here, but the damage was already done and I wasn't saving the time that I was hoping to. After driving back to the museum, I'll have to perform another cutscene skip, with this cutscene being closer to 2 minutes long. Luckily, the skip is the easiest of them all to perform, because I can just mash pause to buffer the pause menu up. So I use both the pause button on my controller and spam escape on my keyboard to pull it off in one pause, saving over 2 minutes. And with that cutscene skip over, we are officially past the mid-game and on to the endgame levels, starting with Bart 2. For the first mission here, I need to pick up 15 kids in the school bus and drive to Krusty Lou Studios before the end of the time limit. This is easy enough, but this is going to be another crucial area in the run where the coin route comes into play, because if I don't have at least 600 coins by the time I get to the studio, then I have to go out of my way to collect backups, losing a lot of time. After arriving, I'll move Kearney as close to Krusty as I can get him, and then buy the Glowback supervillain car, which is going to be our fastest car for the rest of Bart 2. For the next mission, I'm going to trail this truck and follow it to Krusty's limo, picking up as many coins as I can get along the way. Upon reaching the limo, I'll bump the side of it to start a race with the limo driver to the pier. Like most races, this one is pretty easy with shortcuts. After reaching the pier, I'll talk to Krusty and start one of the most boring auto-scroller missions of the game, Lab Coat Caper. For this mission, we have to trail Professor Frink around the area for a couple minutes, and that's literally it. But once I finish this mission comes what I would call a gauntlet of some of the most difficult missions of the entire run, especially for me. The first one is Duff for me, Duff for you. After talking to Frink to start this mission, I'll restart it to start in my vehicle, and then drive down to the brewery. Upon reaching the brewery, a Duff truck will spawn, and I need to hit it a couple of times for 6 drops to progress. Per usual, I'm going to try and trap the truck to make this much easier. Unfortunately on this attempt, I didn't have a great speed upon entering the brewery, which is needed for the fast strat to work, but I did manage to get a decent speed boost by accelerating just as I started moving downhill. I crashed the Duff truck into the taffy shop, and after turning around, the truck somehow managed to get itself trapped, allowing for a pretty quick mission. Next up is Full Metal Jackass. For this mission, I have to destroy Principal Skinner's car and collect the laser gun as quickly as possible. I'll do a hit right away to start off some damage, and then hit the car again as it goes around this turn. As Skinner drives up to Krusty Lou Studios, I'll line up my car alongside his to trap him inside of the studio. But of course, a traffic car ended up being in the way, causing Skinner to move to the left lane to drive around it, and made him turn way sharper left than he normally would, making the strat nearly impossible for me to pull off. With this happening, the only way to back this mission up is by running Skinner's car into walls and hoping for the best. I did end up finishing this mission, saving some time from my previous run, but this was a far cry from being close to my best segment. Next up is another notorious mission in Hit and Run that some casual players to this day still have yet to beat, Set to Kill. For this mission, I need to drive into 25 laser stands within a fairly strict time limit. While driving on the pier, I'll need to be very cautious of pedestrians, because it's highly likely to get a hit and run during this mission. But in this run, I played it super safe, avoiding the hit and run at all costs, because I really wanted to PB. One thing most people don't know about this mission is that the timer to return to Krusty actually starts after hitting the last stand, so it's best to leave one for the trip back to Krusty Lou Studios. In my case, I actually leave 3 stands on the pier and use a reset trick off the ramp to collect them instead, which is slightly quicker, finishing the mission with relative ease. After completing this mission, I'll head into the studio and collect a bunch of coins, and then head to the last mission of Bart 2, King and Kodo Strike Back. In this mission, I need to race the aliens to the brewery before they escape. The alien car in this mission is really fast, so there's not really any room for mistakes. It is possible to make this race easy mode by driving in the opposite direction and doing the race in reverse, but going the way I'm going is slightly faster with the shortcuts, and by driving on the pier guarantees that the aliens will drive into a box on the beach, giving an extra 31 coins for free. While the race here can be quite tricky, the real difficult part here is the third and final cutscene skip of the run. This cutscene skip isn't any more difficult than the other two, but with this being at the end of the run, while being on good pace, definitely makes this a little more stressful. Not to mention I missed this cutscene skip in my PB, so after hitting it, I was guaranteed to be ahead of my next split in Homer 2. The first mission in Homer 2 is a pretty simple collectathon, with the real main goal for speedrunners to finish collecting 500 coins for the final car purchase of the run. In this run, I thought I had enough coins leaving the house, so I only grabbed 1 box by the neighbors. But this ended up being a massive mistake, and I was something like 13 coins short by the end, so I had to waste a bit of time running into every object in sight. After buying the zombie car, I'll mission warp to the second mission of Homer 2, Long Black Probes. For being an endgame mission, it's actually pretty simple. I just have to trail this alien car to the power plant. There are a couple of tricks I can do here, involving abusing resets to despawn the map to complete this mission while out of bounds. But because I'm so goofy and quirky and weird, I decided to go for a slightly faster YOLO strat instead. So earlier in the video, I mentioned that playing on 69 FPS rather than 60, or even something lower to the mid 40s, really provided me no benefit, and the biggest reason I would have to say is because of Bridge Clip. Bridge Clip is a 60 FPS exclusive strat, and it works because it works. And at this point you really shouldn't have expected a more thorough explanation. By doing an e-brake boost and heading straight for the other side of this bridge can sometimes allow the car to clip through and jump over a trigger that would normally make the car reset, allowing me to play out of bounds. Going for this trick during this mission is somewhat risky, as you only really get 1 or maybe 2 attempts at it, because even if you do get it past the second try, there might be too much damage on the car, causing it to blow up, but the main reason is you'll just lose the mission from the alien car getting too far away. But yeah, I always like to give this trick an attempt, but I've only ever pulled it off once in a run. If I did manage to execute it, I could save anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds. Here's how it went in this run. Wait, will that... Oh my fucking god, dude. Fuck. Man.
Will be mine.
Inside job for sure. Another benefit to pulling this trick off, or just getting the out of bounds during this mission in general, is being able to skip the strat that I'm about to do in the next mission. In the next handful of missions, the main goal is to deliver the nuclear waste to the alien ship all the way to the school from the power plant, which is pretty much the furthest away area on the map. But by getting out of bounds, I'm able to beeline straight to it. In this mission, we're forced to use a hover car, which is actually decently easy to get out of bounds with. To do this, I have to hit the wall, causing the rear of the car to raise, and then instantly reverse it into the wall to the left, allowing me to scale up it. This is about as tricky as it looks, as it's very important to avoid the swinging cages, otherwise the trick becomes nearly impossible. To do this, I go to the setup point most runners use, but I go into it with a little bit of momentum. This does make it much more likely the waste blows up, but if it does work, it usually means I'll get a fast setup. Anyways, once I get out of bounds, I'll drive towards the school using the minimap as a guide, and I'll continue to do so upon entry. Since there are invisible walls everywhere, I have to drive exactly where the roads are listed, where I will 100% crash into a wall and lose the toxic waste. Upon finishing this mission, the area is still unloaded, and I can use this to my benefit. I'll first start by running over to the zombie to start a race, and then cancel it immediately to get my car back, and then head to the school to start the mission. From the school, I'll need to drive all the way back to the power plant, which is easy enough to do from out of bounds. But as I approach the power plant, I'll need to position my car at a near 45-degree angle right up against the wall where we get the nuclear waste from. Once I found a good spot, I'll jump out of the car and make my way up the power plant to do some tricky platforming, which I nearly butchered, but luckily managed to recover. Next, I'll have to run over these platforms, which is easy enough to do by running down the center, and then talk to Mr. Burns to start Alien Autopsy 1. Following this, I'll hop down the power plant and grab the first traffic car I can find, drive it into the toxic waste to pick it up, and then ditch the car. Assuming I positioned my car correctly, I should be able to enter it to get out of bounds again, and then head back to the school. The reason for picking up the toxic waste with the traffic car is because the same cars are used throughout the levels in this game, they just spawn in randomly. So right when I get to the school, I'll try to find the car with the toxic waste as quickly as possible, pointing the camera backwards to spawn in the vehicle quicker if need be. In this attempt, I accidentally bumped into the hearse, making it drop down a bit, and I was worried about driving into the beam, so I reset my car. This placed me too high up to talk to Snake, so I just mission warped instead to start the next mission. This didn't matter too much, because either way the game world gets reset after starting this mission to put Homer in Snake's car, so I would lose the out of bounds either way. In order to get out of bounds again for a quick toxic waste delivery, I'm going to have to return to the bridge I tried clipping through earlier. But this time, there is no room for mistakes, because if I fail this trick, it's impossible for me to PB. Because of how inconsistent bridge clip is for most runners, especially me playing on 69 FPS, after I finish the climb up the power plant, all the nerves that had built up from the entire run to this point suddenly vanish. Because even if I execute this trick correctly, it still may not work. So for me, it's not worth being worried about. For this reason, one of my viewers requested Numb by Linkin Park to play for the ending of the run, and I'll just let the rest of the run speak for itself. No. Again. No.
I'm tired of being what you want me to be.
No.
Feeling so faithless, lost under the surface.
I don't like that spot.
Don't know what you're expecting.
I'll do it anyways.
Put under the pressure.
Yes! Fuck this fucking game, dude. No shot. You're trolling. That lost so much time. Okay, no hit and run. Don't fuck around. It's not over, guys. Avoid the pumpkin. I'm just cruising, all right? It's a jolly little stroll.
one thing. Get out of the way, dude. It's my moment, not yours. All right. That'd be a funny way to lose it. All right. It's done. It's fucking done, guys. It's fucking done. Oh my god. It's fucking done. Holy shit. Oh my god.
And there it is. After several weeks of running and practicing this game every day, I finally managed to achieve my goal time of a sub 135. Unfortunately, I was slightly off in the last jump into the beam, but this actually ended up being a blessing in disguise because a slight time loss allowed me to secure 69th place on the SHAR speedrun leaderboards. And of course, if we go down to filters and sort by 69 FPS, the gold crown is bestowed upon my head. Out of all my speedrun projects, this is one I've put some of the most time into, just due to how difficult some of the strats are, and of course how difficult the game is. But the inconsistency is a massive part of what makes this game so much fun to play. Each run feels like a unique experience each time. Hopefully this video gave a solid insight into what it takes to speedrun a game like this, maybe even inspires a couple of new people to give it a try themselves. Huge thanks to the SHAR community for helping me throughout this journey, and special thanks to all my livestream viewers that watched and supported me along the way. A reminder that I do stream 5 days a week on Twitch, and sometimes on this YouTube channel, so make sure you follow and subscribe to both to get notified when I go live or post content. Thanks again for watching, and thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. Remember to use my link in the description for 70% off, and that's all I have to say for today. As usual, I hope you all have a beautiful life. Later.